What's going on, everybody? In this video I want to go over a couple of small caps I haven't really talked about in a while, and while I have been slowly adding them here and there in small quantities, the charts on most of them have been very ugly. And while I do believe in them long term, they all have growing revenue. Some of these companies expect profitability within only a few quarters. You can't deny that the charts look pretty bad, most of these stocks creating new lows and in long-term downtrends. But we're going to talk about these stocks because I do believe in them long term, and some of these stocks have earnings literally in only a few days. So let's get started right up. In this video, I'm going to look at Workhorse. We're going to look at INDI Semiconductors, which is a very slept on semiconductor stock that I have a lot of faith in. We're also going to take a look at ChargePoint. And I will be doing upcoming videos on more of these small caps that I've talked about in previous history. I've honestly been just kind of avoiding talking about them because they've been in such ugly downtrends. Companies like B&GO having reverse splits and just continuing to sell off. And while I do like these companies and keep a position in them and believe in them long term, from my standpoint, it doesn't really make sense talking about them, saying how I believe in them, just for people to buy them and then say, why did I buy that? Now I'm down from a week ago, I'm down from a month ago. So a lot of these small cap riskier stocks, if you're a long-term believer in, that's great. But if you're just hopping on YouTube looking for some small cap risky stock, a lot of these stocks are in ugly downtrends, and usually it's not worth catching falling knives, hoping that this is the bottom, because the bottom could be a week from now, the bottom could be a month from now. Maybe for some of these stocks, the bottom has already passed. But if you don't have long-term conviction in these stocks, you typically don't want to be buying falling knives. Now that the bit of a disclaimer is out of the way, let's look at these stocks. And first off is going to be Workhorse. They rescheduled their earnings. Their earnings now is going to be Tuesday, November 14th. And this is for their third quarter earnings call. And this chart has been extremely ugly ever since April 2021 when we flashed a death cross. It's basically been trending down ever since, continuing to look bearish on the charts and not able to see a golden cross on the 50 and 200 MA. We got very close here back in October of 2022, so basically about a year ago, when we saw a spike beforehand. Remember, these are lagging indicators, but this spike beforehand was not enough to see a golden cross, and once we got that separation, that curl down, we saw more sell-off. People are avoiding these stocks because of these long-term downtrends. They look bearish on the chart, and we have some headwinds ahead of us. We still have inflation fears, we still have a Fed with record high interest rates, and in my opinion, we are definitely towards the end of the rate hikes. You know, maybe there's an off chance that we see one more rate hike. I personally think towards the middle to end of 2024, we will be seeing rate cuts. And inflation data, CPI, PPI, these things can drastically change and get much closer to where we want them to be. And the Fed pivoting and going towards rate cuts would be good, would be very beneficial for these small caps that either have to dilute or have to pull debt out at a very high interest rate. And for that reason, Wall Street has been avoiding these companies. They've been looking extremely ugly on the chart as well. But if you believe in these long terms, you're getting better and better discounts as time goes on. But I just want to remind you guys again, don't buy falling knives unless you believe in the company long term. Even then, buying a falling knife, you need to realize that it's very possible that we continue trending even lower. But Workhorse, back in the beginning of October, created some new lows, and we're basically sitting flat from where we were in the beginning of October. So about a month ago from now, we're basically where we were. So it does look like it's attempting to bottom out, and with our recent Fed meeting out of the way and another pause by the Fed, we could see Workhorse and a lot of these small caps pop. And that is what we've been seeing the last couple of days. But looking at Workhorse's earnings, remember that it's going to be the 14th and not the 7th. They have an estimate of 22.5 million, but remember, they're known for missing their estimates quite considerably. It's really not easy getting a company like this from the ground up to grow their revenue and meet their targets. There's always hiccups along the way, certain regulations that have to be met, certain rules that have to be met. And these execs basically took a broken company, and so far they have made improvements. They have seen growing revenue, although it has missed many of the estimates. But as we continue to get more dealerships on board with selling Workhorse's last mile delivery vans, as we see even more commercial sales of their drones, as we get more USDA grants, we should see that revenue growth. And remember, they recently had approval for companies buying Workhorse's vehicles commercially to see a $40,000 tax credit. These are all positives that will bring in more sales for Workhorse. It's really a matter of them getting cemented more into the industry, finding more dealerships that will actually sell the vehicles. Now, I also want to talk about INDI Semiconductor. This is one of the most slept on stocks in the market, in my opinion. They have an amazing team of execs. They have some of the most beautiful revenue growth I've seen in the stock market. And it seems like almost every quarter they keep giving like a higher expectation of revenue. And we have more of the same here. Now, their earnings is going to release on November 9. They expect Q3 2023 revenue to be above the $60 million expectation, slightly higher than guidance. And I feel like they did this either the last quarter or the quarter before, where they give these good revenue targets that are record revenue and they exceed that. And don't forget, these guys did say they expect to be profitable by the end of their fiscal year. So we have this quarter and Q4 to go. Do they see profitability this quarter? Do they see profitability next quarter, or do they miss completely? Based on this company and based on the fact that they typically underpromise and overdeliver, at least where revenue is concerned, I do think it's very possible that we see INDI as a profitable company by their next earnings. It could even be this earnings where they report a profit. Now, INDI's chart has been pretty ugly as well, although not as bad as some others. There's a lot more sideways action here, a lot more flips from golden cross to death cross. And INDI really isn't even down all that much from its May 11, 2022 lows. Yes, that's right, guys. This stock has basically gone full circle from May of 2022, and now we're sitting there again. We haven't gone drastically lower in price since then, and we have seen some little pops along the way. I'm definitely a buyer of INDI at this price. This chart looks a lot more promising, while still bearish, while we are still under the 50 and 200 MA, and they did recently death cross. I have a lot more hope for INDI based on this chart, but chart aside, INDI is a great company, and their revenue growth is massive. As I just said a second ago, they're expecting more than a $60 million quarter in the upcoming earnings. Just look back here and see how much revenue they grow every quarter. We just have this consistent revenue growth. And looking back just a few years ago, they were pulling in under $10 million back during their SPAC days when they were Thunderbridge. And while stock price has pretty much decreased, I'd argue where small cap unprofitable stocks are concerned, this is one of the better looking charts. And it's likely their growth in revenue and their expected profitability keeping this stock afloat. But I'm very excited for INDI. I do think we're going to have a really good earnings. I'm definitely going to be listening to their earnings call. And if you have shares, I highly suggest you do too. Now I'm going to go over a catalyst that can drive these stocks much higher, and it is coming up in just a few days. So we're going to go over that in a second, but I do want to talk about ChargePoint stock, CHPT. This one has also, for the last couple of years, been in a very ugly downtrend, creating new lows literally only a few days ago. So you guys can likely see why I'm kind of avoiding talking about these stocks. They're continuing to trend down. And while I do believe in these companies long term, I don't want to talk about these just to have you guys a week later saying, why did you talk about this? Now I'm down. If you are looking at these stocks, you need to have the same type of long-term high conviction as me. Don't go all in on this. Don't go all in, all small caps on your portfolio. Have a well-diversified mix of stocks. Have some large caps, have some mid caps, have some small caps, have some dividend stocks, have your value stocks, and dedicate a small percentage of your portfolio to these small cap, risky, unprofitable stocks. But ChargePoint is reporting about a month from now, and they're expecting a $157 million quarter, which would be a record. And they have pretty consistent revenue growth as well. There are some lapses along the way, but year over year, they definitely have beautiful revenue growth. There are some quarters where they see a little dip in revenue, and then the next quarter redeems themselves basically. But if you believe in ChargePoint for the long term, you're getting this stock at an extreme discount from where it was a few months ago, a few years ago even. But be aware, the chart still does look ugly. But the good thing is, based on the Fed rates, we are getting towards the end of their rate hike cycle, and I do expect a resurgence in these small caps, like I said. Another thing about ChargePoint that's a positive and a negative, I guess you could say, is ChargePoint raised $232 million to support their path to profitability in 2024. Now, they said towards the end of 2024, last quarter basically, they expect profitability. But the big thing here is they said, we have no further plans to access this ATM, at the money share offerings, dilution basically. And this is partly why it's probably been trending down so severely. But now that they're done with this share offering, this headwind is out of the way. And with the Fed meeting out of the way, we have been seeing a nice little rise in ChargePoint over the last couple of days ever since the end of the Fed meeting. And I did want to mention the upcoming catalyst for all these small caps and the overall market. And this is CPI, October's CPI data, which is going to be releasing November 14th, mid of November. And we reached a bottom back in December, right around a 3%, getting very close to that Fed's target. However, since then, we have been trending higher on CPI. We've basically been reporting these like 3.7s. If this upcoming CPI comes in under 3.7, better yet, comes closer to 3, I do think small caps will see a little pop. But this is the big thing here. Seeing this inflation data coming down gives the Fed more likelihood of being able to continue to pause before getting to their target and then being able to cut rates. For now, the market, the Fed, we're all kind of up in the air, whether we're going to see one more final rate hike, whether this is the end, and seeing good inflation data, meaning seeing inflation come, decently down, could be the clue, for lack of a better word, that the Fed is at the end, the Fed is actually at the end of its rate hikes. If inflation data comes in higher, there is a possibility of seeing one more rate hike. But I think the market is kind of up in the air regarding that. And if we can see this inflation data come in lower across the board, CPI, PPI, PCE, if we can see all of these come down, that will definitely add fuel to the fire for these small caps. May even change these charts, may even give a couple of them some golden crosses, which will cause more piling in when the chart looks more bullish. But let me know what you guys think. I hope you have a good weekend, and let me know down below what small caps you're watching, whether it's a company that's growing nice revenue, whether it's a company that expects profitability soon. But what small caps are you watching in anticipation of the Fed finally lowering rates down the road in 2024? Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you like these videos, consider hitting the like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, and I'll see you soon.